Welcome everyone to the Iris Revenge channel. My ex-husband called me Barren. The day my triplets shocked everyone at his wedding. Did you see who just walked in? That's Daniel's poor ex-wife Claire. I thought she couldn't even have kids. So how in the world is she standing there with three little girls that look just like her? I can still hear that whisper echoing in my ears, the same way it did on the day that changed everything. Funny how life works, isn't it? The same man who tried to break me, who told me I was worthless, became the reason I discovered just how strong I could be. My name is Claire Matthews, and this is the story of how I went from being the young woman who gave up her savings, her self-worth, and 6 years of her life for a man who gave nothing back, to becoming the woman who walked into his wedding with 3 daughters by my side and peace in my heart. Before I continue, let me know in the comments which city or province you're watching this from. I'm always curious to see how far my story has reached. And if this is your first time on the channel, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next, because what's about to happen will be hard to believe. I was only 22 when I married Daniel Cooper in our little Methodist church just outside Dayton, Ohio. The air smelled like gasoline from the parking lot because half the guests had driven over in pickup trucks straight from work, and my dress wasn't from some fancy boutique. It was a thrift store find that Mama and I had spent weeks altering by hand until it looked just right. Back then, I thought that kind of sacrifice was love. I thought a good woman could help a man grow into the husband she dreamed of. Daniel was tall, easy-smiled with grease under his fingernails from working on cars all day, and just enough charm to make me believe I was the luckiest girl in town. When he proposed under the old oak tree behind my parents' house, I said yes without hesitation, not realizing that life was already dropping red flags like warning flares in the night sky. And the biggest one of all came just a few months later when we started trying for a family and nothing happened. Each month I took those little tests in the fluorescent light of our bathroom, praying for 2 lines only to stare at one single line and swallow the disappointment like bitter medicine. Daniel brushed it off at first, but deep down I could feel his patience thinning, and what I didn't know then was that this single struggle, the emptiness of those tests, was about to shape every cruel word and every choice he would make for years to come. At first, Daniel would laugh it off when another test came back, negative, brushing his hand through his hair and saying, "Maybe next month, babe, don't stress." But as the months dragged into years, those laughs turned sharp, like knives hidden in his words. He started looking at me differently, not with love, but with blame. And one night after Melissa dropped by the garage to pick up her car, I overheard him bragging to one of his buddies. "At least I know it ain't me. I've already got a kid out there to prove it." My stomach twisted because Melissa's boy had always carried Daniel's eyes, or at least that's what people said. And though he swore to me she was just a fling long before we ever met, I couldn't shake the way she looked at me whenever we crossed paths, the smug little smirk like she knew something I didn't. By then, Daniel had started talking big about owning his own auto shop, saying he was tired of working under someone else's name. He caught me off guard one evening when he came home greasy and smelling like exhaust, dropping a business card on the table and saying, "All I need is a little startup cash, Claire. You believe in me, right?" And I did. I believed so hard it blinded me. Without hesitation, I handed him $15,000, the savings my mom had put aside for me before she passed money I'd promised myself I'd only touch for something truly life-changing. He kissed my forehead that night and whispered, "This is for us, baby. Our future." I held on to that promise like it was sacred, not knowing it was the last time I'd ever hear him talk about a future that included me. The shop opened and customers rolled in the smell of oil and new tires filling the air while Daniel strutted around like he'd built the empire himself. At first, I felt proud watching the Cooper Auto sign go up, telling myself our sacrifices were paying off. But pride curdled into something sour when Daniel stopped coming home on time, when his phone stayed face down on the nightstand, when Melissa's name flashed across the screen more than once. Still, I swallowed it, told myself every couple goes through rough patches, that he was just stressed from running a new business. The breaking point came one Friday evening. I had cooked meatloaf the way he liked it, with mashed potatoes and green beans, and I asked timidly, afraid of the answer, if we could maybe start seeing a fertility specialist together. His fork clattered against the plate, and he leaned back with that cruel smirk I'd once thought was charming. Why waste the money, Claire? The problem isn't me. It's you. Everyone knows it. My cheeks burned, but the words cut deeper than fire. For weeks after, he barely looked at me, except when he needed laundry done or bills paid, until one night he came home, tossed a manila envelope on the table, and said almost casually, "It's over. I'm filing for divorce. Melissa gives me what you never could." My hands shook as I opened those papers, the black ink blurring through my tears. 6 years of my life, all reduced to legal jargon and his cold signature at the bottom. What hurt the most wasn't even the divorce itself, it was how small he made me feel in those final weeks. He paraded Melissa and her son around town like trophies, driving a brand new truck that still smelled of leather, while I sat in the little duplex we'd once called home, surrounded by empty rooms and pregnancy tests shoved in the back of drawers. People whispered behind my back at the grocery store, their pity almost as suffocating as his disdain. I remember standing in the cereal aisle one morning when an older woman from church leaned in and muttered, "Some women just aren't meant to be mothers, honey. Maybe God has another plan." I smiled weakly, pushed my cart forward, and cried all the way back to my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. That night, I packed what little dignity I had left into 2 suitcases and drove back to my father's house in Cleveland, the old clapboard place with peeling paint and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Daddy didn't ask questions when I showed up on the doorstep. He just wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "You're home now." But inside, I felt hollow, like Daniel had scooped out every ounce of faith I had in myself. For weeks, I couldn't look in the mirror without hearing his voice telling me I was broken, barren, and useless. What I didn't know then was that those ashes, those brutal, humiliating ashes, would become the soil where something far stronger would take root. At first, moving back into my father's house felt like failure. The rooms smelled faintly of old coffee and motor oil, the way they always had when Mom was still alive, but now it felt like a museum of everything I had lost. Daddy tried to keep the diner running, Matthew's Diner, the little brick place on the corner that had been in our family for 30 years, but most mornings the booth sat empty, the vinyl seats cracked, the jukebox collecting dust. I would help him wipe down counters, refill ketchup bottles, and watch him rub his chest when he thought I wasn't looking, the weight of age and years of hard labor catching up to him. It was in that empty diner one gray afternoon that I first met Ethan Walker. He was standing by the window with a camera slung around his neck, ordering black coffee, saying he was in town shooting a series on small businesses that had been around longer than the chain restaurants, popping up like weeds. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another stranger passing through, until he turned his lens toward me and said softly, almost like he was asking permission, "Mind if I capture the heart of this place?" Something in the way he said it made me straighten my shoulders for the first time in months, like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. Ethan came back the next day, then the next, asking questions about recipes my mom used to make, about the people who used to gather at the diner after Friday night football games, about the history that still lingered in the faded photographs on the wall. For the first time since Daniel left, someone was looking at me, not as a woman defined by what she couldn't give, but by what I carried inside: stories, resilience, quiet strength I didn't even know I had. One evening, as we stacked chairs onto tables, Ethan looked at me and said, "You know, farm-to-table spots are popping up everywhere, but what people really crave is authenticity. You have that here, Claire. You could make this place something new." His words planted a seed I hadn't realized was waiting for water. That night, I pulled out an old notebook and began sketching ideas by lamplight menus with fresh produce from local farms, smoothies, and salads, alongside the meatloaf and pancakes, a place that honored the past but also embraced healing. I called the idea Harvest Table, though. At that point, it was nothing more than pen scratches on paper. Of course, nothing came easy. I had no money. Daniel had taken every last cent of the $15,000 I'd given him, and what I earned waiting tables at night barely covered the mortgage and my dad's medication. There were nights I sat at the kitchen table staring at bills, chewing my lip until it bled, wondering if I was a fool for dreaming again. But every morning I woke up and poured coffee for the handful of regulars who still came by, and something in their tired smiles gave me fuel. When Jenkins, a retired mailman who'd eaten breakfast at the diner every day for 20 years, told me, "This is the only place that still feels like home," I felt a spark. Maybe I couldn't rebuild my marriage, maybe I couldn't erase the whispers that I was barren, but I could rebuild this little corner of the world. And maybe that would rebuild me too. So I started small. I convinced Daddy to let me add a few new items to the menu: grilled vegetable wraps, fruit parfaits, fresh pressed juice in mason jars. I called local farmers asking if they could supply produce on credit until I could pay them back. Ethan filmed the process, capturing me scrubbing floors at midnight, painting the walls a warm honey color, arranging mismatched thrift store chairs into something that looked like charm. He edited it into a short video and posted it online, and to my shock, it started spreading beyond our little town. People commented things like, "This feels like home," and "We need more places like this." For the first time in years, I felt seen. I wasn't just Daniel's barren ex-wife. I wasn't the girl who'd been discarded. I was Claire Matthews, daughter of a diner owner woman with a dream. And even though the road ahead was long, even though I had no idea how many storms were still waiting, I could feel the faintest shift inside me, like the first green sprout pushing through cracked concrete. Fragile, yes, but alive. Just when I thought I was finally standing on my own 2 feet, life reminded me that every comeback comes with a price. The first obstacle was money. Harvest Table was little more than a dream painted onto cracked diner walls, and dreams don't pay invoices. The local farmers were patient at first, bringing me crates of apples, spinach, and carrots, with kind smiles and gentle reminders, but when weeks stretched into months and my payments were still late, I saw the worry in their eyes. One even said, "Claire, I love what you're doing, but I can't keep my own lights on if I keep fronting you." That night, I sat at the counter long after closing, head in my hands, staring at the register that held less than $200. My dad shuffled in wearing his old plaid robe, laid a hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "Baby, I don't like seeing you burn yourself out. Your mama would have been proud, but proud don't pay bills." His words stung, not because they weren't true, but because I had been telling myself the same thing every night as exhaustion clawed at my bones. The second obstacle came wrapped in the smug grin of my ex-husband. One Saturday morning, as I was hauling in a box of oranges, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside the diner. Out stepped Daniel, dressed sharp, holding hands with Leah, the same Leah he had sworn was just a friend while we were married. She had on a diamond ring so large it caught the sunlight like a mirror. They strolled in like royalty inspecting a peasant's land, Daniel's cologne filling the air before his voice did. "Claire," he said, drawing out my name like he was tasting it. Still playing house in this dump, I froze the knife in my hand, slipping slightly as I cut lemons for the morning juice. Leah scanned the room with thinly veiled disgust, then smirked at the chalkboard menu where I had carefully written the day's specials in pastel chalk. "Kale wraps," she sneered. "Guess you finally realized you couldn't give him a baby, so you're giving strangers lettuce instead." The words sliced deeper than any knife ever could. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to straighten up and meet their eyes. Enjoy your coffee, I said evenly, praying my voice wouldn't shake. They didn't stay long, but their laughter trailed behind them like poison. As soon as the door closed, I sank against the counter, shaking my throat raw from holding back the scream clawing to get out. The third obstacle was inside me: fear. Fear that no matter how many walls I painted or recipes I tested, I'd never be more than the barren woman Daniel had defined me as. Nights became the hardest. After Ethan left with his camera and the last light flicked off, I'd collapse into a booth staring at the ceiling tiles, hearing Daniel's voice echo. "You're broken, Claire. No man wants a woman who can't give him children." I hated that his words still had power, that even as I built something new, the ghost of my marriage kept dragging me backward. More than once, I thought about quitting, about selling the diner, getting a job at the grocery store, and letting Harvest Table die before it embarrassed me further. But every time that thought took hold, something small kept me tethered. Mr. Jenkins sliding me a $20 tip with a wink, saying, "Best wrap I ever had." A mother telling me her teenage daughter finally ate something green without complaining. Ethan showing me footage of the diner's transformation, saying, "Claire, look. This isn't just a restaurant, it's a story." Still, the pressure kept building. The health inspector showed up one Thursday, clipboard in hand, sniffing around like a bloodhound. The fryer in the back had leaked grease again, and the sink pipes rattled ominously whenever the dishwasher ran. "You need serious upgrades," he told me flatly. "Otherwise, I can't keep you open." My chest went cold. Where was I supposed to get money for new equipment when I could barely pay for carrots? I smiled weakly and told him I'd take care of it. But as soon as he left, I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed until my throat burned. That same night, Ethan found me curled up on the diner floor, surrounded by receipts and shut-off notices. He sat beside me in silence for a long time before saying, "You don't have to carry this alone. Let me help." His words should have felt like a lifeline, but pride is a stubborn thing. "I can't keep taking," I whispered. That's all I did with Daniel, gave and gave until I had nothing, and still, I was told it wasn't enough. "I can't owe anyone else." Ethan didn't argue, he just nodded, then quietly set up his camera again. "Then don't do it for me. Do it for her," he said, pointing to an old photo on the diner wall, my mom in her apron smiling as if she believed love and food could heal the whole world. His words burrowed into me. Maybe this fight wasn't just about proving Daniel wrong. Maybe it was about proving my mama right. I thought the worst was behind me until one rainy afternoon my father handed me the phone, his brow furrowed. "Some fella said his name's Daniel. Wants to talk to you." The name alone sent a chill through me. I almost refused, but some force made me take it. Daniel's voice slithered across the line, just as smooth and smug as I remembered. "Claire," he drawled, "I wanted to be the bigger person and extend an invitation. Leah and I are getting married next month, and I thought it would be respectful to include you. After all, none of this," his voice dropped into a mockery of gratitude, "would have been possible without your contribution back then." My stomach flipped. He wasn't inviting me to celebrate his happiness. He wanted me to stand there as living proof of his victory, the barren ex-wife who funded his empire but had nothing to show for herself. "You'll want to see what real love looks like," he added before hanging up. I sat in silence, pulse hammering, humiliation and rage fighting for dominance. But then I looked up at Ethan, who was across the room tightening a loose chair leg, and at the family photo of Mama smiling down from the diner wall. Something hardened inside me. If Daniel thought I was still the woman he could belittle, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like preparing for battle. Ethan pulled up Daniel and Leah's social media lavish posts of wedding cakes taller than me, gold-plated invitations, designer suits. The captions dripped arrogance. "New beginnings require letting go of old mistakes." That line burned into me. I was his old mistake. But instead of shrinking, I started planning. I dusted off the folder of medical records I had kept hidden for years, records proving my fertility was never the problem. I reopened the file with the DNA results I had obtained, secretly tests that revealed Fred, the boy Daniel had paraded as proof of his manhood, wasn't biologically his at all. And tucked alongside those, I kept the paper with his own genetic test, showing the truth he had always feared: Daniel could never father children naturally. Every document was a shard of the truth he had buried under years of manipulation and lies. For years I had kept them out of fear, out of shame. But now they felt like weapons forged in fire, waiting for their moment. When the wedding day came, I wasn't the broken woman who had left Daniel's house. I walked into that Atlanta ballroom with Ethan at my side, steady as a mountain, and 3 little girls holding our hands. Yes, our daughters. 3 perfect girls, triplets born from the love Daniel said I could never provide. They toddled in, wearing yellow dresses, ribbons bouncing their giggles, filling the marble hall like sunshine cutting through storm clouds. Heads turned as we entered. People whispered, eyes flicking from me in my emerald dress to Ethan's protective arm around me, to the girls clinging to us. Daniel saw me mid-laugh at the bar, and I watched his smile crack like glass. He excused himself and crossed the room, disbelief written on his face. "Claire?" he stammered. "Triplets." I smiled coolly. "Yes, Daniel. Life has a way of surprising you when you're with the right person." His jaw tightened, but before he could reply, Veronica swept in, glowing in her gown, mistaking us for polite guests, until recognition dawned. Her smile faltered, the air in the room shifting. For a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. Dinner passed in a blur of polite conversations and sharp glances until the speeches began. Daniel, ever the showman, stood before his guests with a champagne glass in hand. "I used to think I knew what love was," he began, his voice smooth, practiced. "But real love is about finding the right person, the one who gives you everything." Veronica showed me what it means to have a real family. Applause filled the room, but my chest burned. Then Veronica took the mic, her voice sugar-sweet but barbed. "Some people can't give you the legacy you deserve," she said, eyes flicking toward me. "But with the right woman, miracles happen." My hands clenched beneath the table. Around me, guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the venom beneath her words. And that's when clarity struck. I hadn't come here just to endure this. I had come to end it. When the DJ invited family and friends to give toasts, I rose. The room hushed as I walked to the microphone. "My name is Claire Matthews," I began, voice steady. "Daniel's ex-wife." Gasps rippled like a wave. I looked directly at the bride and groom. "Thank you for inviting me. Tonight has been a walk down memory lane." Nervous laughter scattered through the crowd, but I pressed on. I heard some interesting things in these speeches. About legacy, about love, about family. So let's talk about that. From my purse, I pulled out my phone, pressing play on a recording, Daniel's voice from years ago, full of promises. "You're investing in us, Claire. In our future. I swear we'll have everything we dreamed of." The room went silent. That I said, holding the phone high, was the night I gave Daniel my entire savings, $15,000, to start the business that built this life you're celebrating. Murmurs erupted. I saw Veronica's smile slip, her fingers tightening around her glass. But that's not all. I continued, pulling out the medical records. For 6 years, Daniel told me I was broken because we couldn't have children. He made me believe I was the problem. But here are the medical reports, everyone proving I was perfectly healthy. I let the papers fan out for all to see. Daniel refused to get tested. Claimed he had proof of his fertility because of Fred. But here I held up the DNA results as the truth. Fred was never his biological son. And here I raised the final paper is Daniel's genetic test. Proof that he has been infertile his entire life. He couldn't father children then. He can't now. He never will. Gasps turned to shouts. Phones lit up, guests whispering furiously. Veronica's face drained of color. Daniel stumbled forward, hand outstretched as if he could snatch the words back from the air, but it was too late. So when you called me barren, I said, my voice sharp as glass, you were projecting your own truth. Because the woman you discarded, the one you called broken, is now the mother of 3 beautiful daughters. I gestured to where Ethan stood, our triplets nestled in his arms, their little bows glowing under the chandelier. Real legacy isn't built on lies or cruelty, it's built on love. The room erupted, some guests applauding, others recording every second. Veronica ripped off her veil and stormed from the stage while Daniel stood frozen, his empire of lies collapsing around him. I placed the microphone back on the stand and walked out with my head high, Ethan's hand warm in mine, our girls skipping at our sides. Behind us, chaos roared, but ahead of us, for the first time in years, was peace. The ballroom doors shut behind me that night, and I thought maybe that was the end, that I had said my piece, shown the truth, and could finally walk away. But sometimes the end of one fire is just the spark for another. Within days, the wedding fiasco was splashed across gossip blogs and local news sites. Blurry cell phone videos of my speech racked up thousands of views, each clip captioned with words like "wedding meltdown" and "truth bomb." At first I avoided reading the comments, but Ethan showed me a few that made my chest swell. Women saying she spoke for all of us who were blamed for things we couldn't control. Men admitting they had been silent witnesses to cruelty and regretted it. For once, my pain wasn't a secret shame, it was proof living and undeniable that the lies Daniel built his empire on had a cost. And that cost was coming due. The cracks appeared fast. Veronica filed for divorce before the honeymoon week was even over. Rumors spread that she'd already moved back in with her parents, her diamond ring pawned off to cover attorney fees. Clients started pulling their business from Daniel's dry cleaning chain, whispering that no one wanted their clothes handled by a man whose name was now linked to scandal and deceit. The image he had polished for years, sharp suits, expensive cars, big speeches about family values, collapsed like cardboard in the rain. By the end of the month, he was down to one struggling storefront, creditors hounding him, his once slick smile replaced by a haggard, hunted look. And yet, for all the satisfaction that gave me, a deeper part of me still felt unfinished. Because beneath all the humiliation and gossip, one truth gnawed at me: I had never been compensated for what he stole. $15,000 wasn't just a number. It was my life's work, my belief in him, my sacrifice. And if I let that slide, what message would I be sending to every woman who had ever been used up and tossed aside? That's when I got the call from Jennifer Martinez, Veronica's divorce attorney. "Mrs. Matthews," she said crisply, "based on the evidence you revealed at the wedding, you may have a claim to a portion of Daniel's business assets. If your investment was the seed capital, you're entitled to a share." At first I balked. I had Harvest Table now, I had Ethan and the girls. I wasn't desperate for money. But Jennifer's words echoed in me. If you walk away, you're letting him keep what he stole. So I swallowed my hesitation and agreed. For months we slogged through legal filings, depositions, and tense hearings. Daniel tried every trick in the book, claiming the money had been a gift, saying I'd exaggerated the recording, painting himself as the victim of a vengeful ex-wife. But every time his lawyer raised his voice, Jennifer calmly played that recording again. "You're investing in us, Claire. In our future." There was no wriggling out of it. The judge eventually ruled in my favor, awarding me not just my original investment, but a share of the growth it had fueled, over $400,000 in total. To pay it, Daniel had to sell off his last profitable location. The man who had once strutted through town bragging about his empire was reduced to working behind someone else's counter, pressing shirts for wages. And me, I didn't feel revenge. I felt release. The money was just a punctuation mark, the period at the end of a sentence that had dragged on too long. Ethan and I had agreed early on we wouldn't hoard the windfall. After setting aside college funds for the girls and replacing Daddy's leaky roof, We donated the rest to organizations that helped women rebuild after divorce and abuse legal clinics, job training program shelters. When the local paper covered the story, I braced myself for backlash, but instead, I was met with gratitude. Letters poured in from women saying my choice gave them courage to demand what they were owed, to fight for their own dignity. One line from a stranger in Ohio stayed with me. You turned humiliation into hope. That's the kind of legacy that matters. Those words carried me through every doubt I had about whether I'd gone too far. Because maybe this was never just about me and Daniel. Maybe it was about all the women who needed proof that silence wasn't the only option. As for Daniel, I never heard from him again. Not directly. But word filtered back through town that he was living in a rented apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta driving a used sedan, his once perfect suits long pawned. Veronica finalized the divorce leaving with her daughter, and from what I heard, she never looked back. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted inviting me to that wedding, if in his darkest hours he replayed that night the way I had once replayed every cruel word he'd spoken to me. But the truth is, I didn't care anymore. His downfall wasn't my trophy, it was his own doing. My victory wasn't in watching him fall. It was in rising so high that his shadow could no longer touch me. It's been 5 years since that night in the ballroom, and sometimes I still wake up half expecting to hear Daniel's voice sneering at me, reminding me of everything I wasn't. But then I hear the soft giggles of my daughters drifting down the hallway, or the low hum of Ethan grinding coffee beans in the kitchen, and I remember that life has a way of rewriting even the cruelest scripts. Harvest Table is no longer just a struggling diner with mismatched chairs. It's a thriving cafe with lines out the door on Saturdays, a place where families gather after soccer games, and grandparents bring their grandkids for pancakes. We expanded last year, knocking down the wall to add more space, and the mural I painted on the side sunflowers stretching toward the sky has become a little landmark in our town. My girls, Grace, Lily, and Hope, race through the cafe on busy mornings, their braids flying, handing out napkins to customers who smile at the sight of them. They are my daily reminder that the word barren was never mine to carry. They are living proof that what someone calls broken can in truth be overflowing with abundance. At night, when the cafe is quiet and the girls are asleep, I sometimes sit with Ethan on the porch swing that creaks the same way it did when I was a girl. He'll rest his arm around me and we'll listen to the crickets while the world slows down. In those moments, I feel a peace I once thought I'd never know. I don't think of Daniel often anymore. But when his face does flicker through my memory, it isn't with anger. It's with a strange, bittersweet gratitude. Because without his cruelty, without his betrayal, I might never have been pushed hard enough to find my own strength. He didn't break me. He revealed me. And for that, I thank him silently, even as I wish him well on whatever lonely road he's walking now. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: your worth is not determined by the lies someone else tells about you. You are not defined by the names they call you, or the love they withhold, or the dreams they try to bury. Sometimes the very person who tries to destroy you becomes the reason you rise higher than you ever thought possible. And sometimes the ashes of humiliation are the richest soil for growth. I used to think my life ended the day I signed those divorce papers. But now, when I tuck my 3 daughters into bed, when I hear their laughter echo through the cafe, when Ethan looks at me with the kind of steady love I once thought I didn't deserve, I know the truth that wasn't the end at all. That was the beginning. And if my journey proves anything, it's this peace doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from transforming it into a story of strength, love, and freedom. Thank you for listening until the very last moments of this story. Please leave a comment and share your thoughts and feelings. And if this is your first time visiting this channel, Don't forget to hit subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss out on these real-life stories that are deep, bitter, and full of spectacular plot twists. See you in the next videos.